Born female, he transitioned at 12 and said he was badly bullied at school.
After struggling with his mental health throughout most of his teenage years, 17-year-old Charlie Millers became increasingly unwell during the second half of 2020. Charlie spent the next few months in and out of the mental health unit at Prestwich Hospital in Manchester.
Charlie had the most complex needs of all of her 20 cases.
He was then sectioned.
Charlie had made 4 attempts on his life, the last of which proved fatal.
And then they came back and told us he was brain dead. Yeah, sorry. If you wasn't at the inquest to listen to everything, you wouldn't have believed it. You wouldn't believe this goes on, but it actually really does.
It highlighted staffing issues on the night, saying, due to sickness absence being reported on the day, there was no qualified nurse rostered on duty for the night shift.
The stuff we found out afterwards was absolutely unreal, like the failures, basic things that were failed. 6 months after Charlie's death, there was another death, so there was 3 in 9 months.
When asked by the coroner if someone with more experience was better suited to looking after Charlie, she said yes, in hindsight. Now, a social worker at Junction 17 said staff had witnessed Charlie, who was self-harming, but they hadn't stopped him.
I'm so angry, like it could have been prevented. This whole situation could have been prevented.
This is Charlie's story, told by his mother, Samantha.
Courtney was just always into football, mostly had like boyfriends at school and stuff. Had a couple of like girlfriends, but was really one of the lads. It was always football kits, football boots, you know, and but Courtney was great, like had her own style. Didn't let anything faze her. Charlie was just this whole other person. Like we saw differences, and Charlie was really comfortable then into who he wanted to be, who he was. So yeah, and family, it was a bit strange at first because I had a daughter for 11 years and now I've got this son, which never bothered me. You know, you be who you are. Who you want to be, just, you know, nothing as a family, that didn't bother us.
When you look back to when Courtney, then Charlie, started to transition,
Yeah.
how did that feel like? Does that feel like you're losing a daughter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'd already lost a daughter in 2009. She was a full-term stillbirth. So I'd already been through that experience. But with Charlie, with Courtney, yeah, I had to kind of grieve silently. I could speak to friends and family, but I would never tell Charlie how I felt, you know, because obviously it wasn't about, I was upset that he wanted to be a boy or anything. It was nothing like that. It was just like I'd lost my daughter, Courtney. So yeah, it was tough in some respects, but I also gained an amazing son. So, you know, it was like I did lose Courtney, but Charlie was just brilliant. Yeah, it's really important as a human being that you get to be who you want to be. You know, and for us as a family, that's really important to us. So we supported Charlie, you know, in every step. Obviously, it was very new to us. I'd not even I'd not experienced transgender at all. So it was very new. So we were all learning together. But the one thing Charlie did was he started high school as a girl and transitioned through and then finished school as a boy. And it's something that his particular high school had never experienced before. So he was able to teach the whole school really, and the teachers, and you know, there was just the simple things like toilets. Charlie wanted there to be you know, the male and female toilets, but one where both could use, you know. Yeah. So it was little things like that. He did great things, you know, for other people in school.
So has that school now got a transgender toilet then?
Yeah, so the school changed a hell of a lot, and they've actually had kids now go through the school who are transgender. So I think, like, you know, Charlie being the first, he was able to show them, the difficulties to be transgender when you're in, a mixed school. And he enabled the teachers to, set everything out comfortably for other people, and Charlie as well.
So he helped carve the way, really.
Yeah, he did.
Some legacy left behind, some pride there.
Yeah, definitely.
Was he subject to bullying at school?
One boy in particular was made his life hell. And it was that where his mental health started, really. So the bullying, it was all to do with him being transgender. Now, we contacted school. We actually had to get the police involved because he was attacked and various things. So we got the police involved. But we did ask school about doing a mediation meeting with Charlie and this other boy and the family as well. And we were told that the family don't agree with transgender, and they weren't going to come to the meeting.
Did Charlie have any mental health issues growing up?
Yeah, so he was put on. He actually had ADHD, so he was put on medication for that. And they upped his dose twice in 3 months, and we noticed that's where the self-harming began. But the mental health issues in general stemmed from like the bullying, and then also he had at high school a best friend called I'm not going to say her name, sorry. He had a best friend at high school, and when Charlie transitioned, she was really great at first. But then when there was nothing in common with them, in ways like this girl wanted to go makeup shopping and stuff, and I don't understand why Charlie couldn't have gone, because he would have gone, but she just wanted a new friend, a girlfriend. So she went become friends with somebody else, and it really hit Charlie hard, because Charlie, he didn't really associate with people, so he didn't have that many friends. His circle was very small. And when she left, and become friends with somebody else, it took its toll on him. He'd become isolated, he'd stay in his room, wouldn't go out, stuff like that. So, yeah, there was quite a lot he had to contend with, and obviously his mental health just deteriorated from there.
At what age did he start to kind of recluse and keep himself in his room and stuff like that?
So really, around about 13, that's where it began. And yeah, he just didn't associate, and it was at that time that he felt like sort of like distance from what was his best friend. So it all kind of happened when he was about 13. Yeah.
When did you start to notice the self-harm, and what, if you don't mind going into detail, what would that
No.
self-harm be?
So we weren't aware of the self-harming. It was school that alerted us. So they rang us and told us, and we were a little bit like, oh, so yeah, so it started off minor, like really minor, and to another level, at the end. But yeah, that's where the self-harming started. Now, we'd been on holiday in the October, so we saw body parts that, and then from when we got back from the holiday up until we were alerted about the self-harming, it was winter, so we'd always had jumpers on and clothing that we that's why we weren't aware. So yeah.
So was he cutting himself?
Yeah. It started off just really minor scratches, and then I've got actual pictures when, like, to a point where he'd have to have stitches and staples. That's how bad he got, towards the end. But yeah, it just started off. He was cutting himself, and then as time went on. So when he was like in his last year at high school, for instance, it was not long before his GCSEs, he would show signs like of suicide. So we were called to school to say that he was going to like jump from the building, the roof of the school. So the police and ambulance and everyone had to get to school, and ourselves. And so it got to that then. The problem with Charlie is he wouldn't communicate verbally. So he wouldn't express his feelings, tell you how he was feeling verbally. So how he did it was by writing everything down. So he'd have books where we'd say to him, like, if you're having a rough day, write it all in there. And then he would let me read it, and then he'd talk about it afterwards. So that's how he kind of worked. But if he was to just go to a session with anyone, he'd just sit there. And then we actually had a CAMS worker tell him he was wasting the appointment times. He was put on a list for like an outside intervention. So he'd go to the unit, but just as a day case now and then, and do sessions there. That never came around because in the July, he took another overdose and was admitted to hospital, and that's where they sectioned him on a section 2 for the very first time.
Can I ask what were the overdoses? Were they different types of drugs? Was it one medicate? What was he? Doing?
So the first one is ADHD medication, and what's the amphetamine based. So it's taking a high dose of amphetamine on that occasion. The next one was paracetamol and alcohol as well.
When and where did Charlie get admitted to? What was it, a psychiatric hospital or a ward? Or
Charlie was admitted to the secure unit Junction 17 at Prestwich Hospital,
which is a section of the hospital that is for CAMS. Now, when you put on a section 2, it can be anything up to 28 days. So you can be taken off it, but after 28 days, if you're still not well, they increase it to a section 3 or think, what else can be done. So Charlie was on a section 2. Now, he spent a while, well, I say a couple of weeks in there, so he didn't fill the whole 28 days. So what the hospital tended to do was, now Charlie was autistic and had ADHD, but the hospital told us there was no diagnosis of autism, which really shocked us because we were like, well, he'd seen a paediatrician who diagnosed him. It's in all his medical records. Every professional he's seen has been treated with autism. And the hospital were like, absolutely no, he's not got autism, because the ADOS form wasn't completed. And I thought, oh God, for one piece of paper, but every sign was there. Everybody agreed he had autism. But this consultant psychiatrist was like, no, he's not got it. And now we found out later on down the line that if with Charlie having autism, because it was actually at the inquest, they said he did have it, autism. So they give him at the inquest the diagnosis of that, which obviously came too late because he wouldn't have been in that hospital because that was no place for somebody with autism. So he would never have been there in the first place. So therefore, things might have been different, yeah.
A big part of this video that you want to speak about is that inquest. And that's something that you want to basically call out and shed light on, which I'm very interested to hear all about that. When Charlie did get admitted to this psychiatric ward, was he willing, or was he a willing participant, or did you have to convince him, talk him into it? How did that go? How did that conversation go down?
He was actually quite drugged up at the time when he was admitted, because they sometimes have to give intravenous injections to calm people down and stuff, which, Charlie told us stories, and I didn't think that was still a thing. Like, I thought that was from, the old times, that they actually pin people down and just literally IM them.
Wow.
So that was a shock to me. So Charlie was just on so many drugs at the time that I don't think he really cared where he was. But as he came out of that, he didn't want to be there at all. He wanted to be at home. And we didn't really know. We wanted him at home. So throughout his whole mental health up until he passed away, my fight was for him to be at home. The consultant had told Charlie either he was a car crash or his life was a car crash.
Someone told him that?
Yeah, this was a consultant psychiatrist.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. So, like I say, I mentioned that at the inquest because that was like a big thing. So I contacted the consultant and asked about this, what had been said, thinking the consultant's surely going to say to me, I never said such a thing. But no, he came back and he said he apologises. He should have used different terminology.
That's unbelievable. That.
Yeah.
I mean, what a piece. I'm not going to swear on this, but what a piece of
Yeah.
To say something like that to a vulnerable kid
with mental health issues that thinks his life's a car crash anyway.
Yeah.
He doesn't need somebody to tell him that. And I was really shocked. When Charlie was being difficult, he would take him off his section, therefore send him home. Now, we had, throughout his stay in the 5 months, up until he passed away, he'd been sent home on and off his section, I do not know how many times, and it was all punishment for him. So there was times where Charlie wanted to be at the unit to get the help, but then he would be taken off his section and, told to go home, your behaviour's not whatever, but like the way you had to deal with Charlie is if you go into somebody and you start raging at the person, automatically you get your back up, don't you, as a human, and you're going to respond back. Whereas if you go in with a different attitude, different approach, you're going to get a different attitude and approach back. So some of the nurses and stuff wouldn't have the time for Charlie, so they'd go in and wind him up, really. And I'd say afterwards, when I heard about the situations and what had happened, be like, but you did that, like, and then you're taking Charlie off his section because he has thrown a plastic glass of water at one of the staff. Of course, I'd have done the same. The mental health and the ADHD comes with behavioural problems side by side, so you'd expect that the staff would be trained, and some staff were great. I honestly a lot of the young nurses were fab in the job and how they were with Charlie. Us as a family kept us up to date, and then you've got these really senior staff members that are going in and saying things like "you're a car crash" or like it didn't make sense.
You said before that you'd stayed in the hospital for. Did you stay for 12 nights on that chair?
Yeah, so I stayed when he took the first overdose. Yeah, I stayed at a hospital for the full 12 days.
How long was he there before you received a call that Charlie was found to be passed?
I dropped him at the unit 7:45. Now, the nurse in charge, who was a big part of everything that happened, she was at the door, came to the door. She was actually going to get a cup of sugar, and it was only by chance because the other thing about this unit was you could never get a response from them to come to the main door to pick the person up that you're dropping off. So you'd ring and ring or buzz and buzz. Anyway, it was only by chance that she came out and it was raining. Now, we said our goodbyes quite quickly to Charlie because she had a cup of sugar and she was like, oh, my sugar's melting, so quickly get in. We said goodbye, same thing, love you, Mum, and off he went. Now, the thing you need to know is 2 weeks before this incident that ended his life, he'd done exactly the same thing, and he was found with a ligature. Now, he used to ligature throughout his stay. This was only what he did in the unit. He'd never do it at home. And it was the only way he could really self-harm at the unit.
Right.
Because there wasn't sharps around and stuff like that. So ligaturing was learnt behaviour from people in the unit, but also something Charlie did.
How are patients able to get hold of ligature in mental health establishment?
Safety at the unit was an issue. Like Charlie had acquired sharps from the Tesco, which was right close to the hospital, and that was with or without supervised, outside. So he would take sharps in and stuff, but mostly things were confiscated from them. Now, there was one occasion, I always used to ask what he'd used when he did a ligature. And one occasion, Charlie he had like a passion for sportswear. trainers, etc. So he always had a JD bag. Now, when they described what he'd used, it was the cord off the JD bag, and I was like, but why? They know what he does. Why have they not taken that off him? Now, Charlie did ligature. It could be anything up to about 6-7 times a day at the unit. When Charlie went back to the unit from home leave, he was high risk to do it. So he definitely ligature as soon as he come back from the unit. So they put him on 5-minute checks. But the 2 weeks before he did what he did, that killed him, he'd done exactly the same thing. He was resuscitated. He was really poorly. He had black eyes. That's what happens when you ligature. He was really poorly, but he came through that. And I'd had a conversation with Charlie. I said, look, mate, you need to stop doing these because you're going to end up either brain damaged or dead. The checks at the unit are 15-minute checks, 5-minute checks, or 1-to-1. Now, in his care plan, after the incident on the 12th of November, his care plan was changed that he would be put on 1-to-1 if he ligatured. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when he went back to the unit on that night, it was the 4th ligature in 2.5 hours that killed him. Now, the first ligature, you'd expect...
Sorry, is this the night that you left?
Yeah, so I'd left him at 7:45 when I dropped him off, got home, and he'd done 4 in 2.5 hours, and it was 2.5 hours I'd got the phone call, yeah. He was put on 5-minute checks. Now, his care plan, after the first ligature, he should have been put on 1-to-1, but he was never put on 1-to-1. Now, we found out at the inquest that a staff member can increase observations, they just can't decrease them. So if someone's on a 1-to-1, that it's not up to a nurse to take that person off 1-to-1. Whereas if someone's on 5-minute checks, they can go on 1-to-1. So they can make that decision. But it's the consultant that has to step them down on their observations. Now, Charlie was on 5-minute checks when he was returned back to the unit, and he was never put on 1-to-1.
So you said that there was five ligatures in that 2.5 hours before.
Yeah, sorry, 4. There was 3, and then the 4th one.
Did they know about 1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
And then nothing was. There was no 1-to-1 enforced.
No. So the one thing we found out was they were critically short-staffed, and this was a major issue anyway. To me, I don't care if you're short-staffed. That's not my son's problem or anybody else's problem. But we did learn at the inquest that they could have had the extra staff. There was ways of getting the extra staff, but it was never done. Anyway, they did the ratios, but it was only ratios that were according to Charlie being on 1 in 5, whereas he should have been on 1-to-1 and was never put on. Now, when we got the disclosure for the inquest, we read statements, etc., and all of the ligatures were in the statements. They described them as really tight, struggled to get them off on occasions, and that was before the one that killed him. Now, immediately you put somebody on 1-to-1. If they're doing that to that level, you literally wouldn't take any risk, and it's in your care plan, but they never did that. Now, the nurse in charge attended all of the 4 ligatures. She was always with other people, but them other people all describe the ligatures as they're telling the truth, whereas this nurse in charge described the ligatures as loose around his neck. Now, one thing that they do in mental health units that I don't agree with is if a ligature is not obstructing airways, etc., they leave it on somebody and give them the opportunity to take it off themselves. Now, I don't agree with that. That's just my opinion. It didn't work for Charlie at all.
So they leave it for the person that's actually doing it. So in Charlie's case, they would leave it for Charlie to remove.
Yeah.
But Charlie doesn't want to remove it.
He doesn't want to remove it.
No. By definition of it being around the neck.
Well, this is the thing, because
that's disgusting. I mean, the whole system needs to be looked at.
Yeah, they call it therapeutic risk taking. Same way letting somebody out on unescorted leave on a Section 2 when they I'm just going to go to a bridge is therapeutic risk taking.
It sounds like woke. It just sounds like a different kind of wokeism.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to intervene, don't you? And like you said, then allowing someone to go for a walk because it's like it might give them independence and a sense of like freedom.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. You can think that, and you can have this wokest world in that sense, where like give the person this freedom to do that, but you can just go and find that bridge, or you can just keep that. You can just keep that ligature. So I think.
Yeah.
Do you feel resentment towards certain staff members then?
Yeah, absolutely. I just don't understand, firstly, what they were thinking. The other thing to be aware of as well is you've got your high level staff, and then you've got your nurses that are on on shift, but you also have support workers that work in the units as well. Now, support workers, if some so in Charlie's case, when he was found with the ligature, the fourth one, where he was blue, cyanosed, how they described him, he had to wait for another staff member to come and cut it off because they're not allowed to do that. Now, I've never ever, still to this day, cannot understand why, because you wouldn't pass somebody in the street in that situation and not cut the thing off.
No.
But they're not allowed to do that. They've got to wait. Now, we heard that the nurse in charge left the support workers on the unit on their own on that ward, and she left that ward to go get medication or assist on another ward, etc. Now, them support workers can't be left alone. It came out of the inquest, they were left alone. Now, on the fourth incident, the nurse in charge had literally just returned to the ward, so it was good timing. Otherwise, well, they'd have been in a whole new level of trouble. But the support worker who found him had to wave the nurse down. And it's like, what would you... So the question at the inquest for me was, what would you have done if you'd have found Charlie in that situation and the nurse in charge wasn't around?
Yeah.
Or we would have had to have waited. We'd have called the alarm bell and then somebody would have come. So but when somebody's got something around the neck, you can't play with seconds, let alone minutes.
I know. So they were saying that they would potentially be waiting while Charlie's suffocating.
Literally, yeah, strangling himself.
So this comes from how the system works, then, doesn't it? So this whole thing needs rewriting. So with the first 3 times, was this the same ligature? Surely.
No. So sorry,
had 3 different types then.
Yeah. So it was. I think he used a cord from his hood on one of them. There was a bed sheet as well. Now the bed sheets are easy to rip, so I questioned why Charlie was allowed to have the bedding that he had, because he really should have had the anti-rip material.
Sorry, but why is he allowed a cord?
Why is he allowed a cord in his hood?
I've got one here, like this could do me. Why is he allowed a cord? This is just like disgraceful.
Honestly, if you wasn't at the inquest to listen to everything, you wouldn't have believed it. You wouldn't believe this goes on, but it actually really does.
I'm sorry, so carry on. So the first was the cord, which it just absolutely blows my mind. I'm not
sure which order, but he did one with the cord. There was bed sheet, and I think it was some sort of wire or something was another one. The fourth one was definitely bed sheet, and now he's not here.
Can you describe what that feeling's like to be told that your child has died? What was that moment like?
The phone call I received, I'd not had any other phone calls, which was another thing. They should have contacted me on each of the incidents, but never did. So when I got the phone call, it was mad. Like, you're being told your child's having CPR done and he's really poorly and what have you. Then they were taking him to Salford Royal. I don't remember getting there. There was the 2 nurses that had supported Charlie in the ambulance, and one of them actually said, like, you hear the alarm being... So when somebody is in that situation, they have to buzz a bell that goes all over the hospital for everyone to attend the incident. But if you're in INS, which is like a room where the person's on intensive. It's an intensive nursing suite, so you can't leave that to go and attend. So the nurse actually said, who brought Charlie to the hospital, said, you never know what idiots are out there. Like, in other words, they were saying that there was people not capable of doing the job properly and what have you. So a doctor came in and spoke to us and said that Charlie was on life support. It wasn't looking good. So he was taken to the intensive care. But when I walked in and he was on the life support, like, I can't describe to you as a parent, like, I just, I didn't know whether he was going to pull through or not. So that was all going through my head. And you're just looking like, how has it got to this situation? Like, they had every opportunity to stop it. Because when I was told that, even just half an hour before that, it was the fourth one I'd put him in that situation, I just think, how has it got to this? Who's let him get to this? Somebody's to blame. They said they were going to try and wake him in the morning and see if, he'd come round and what have you. So they did. They woke him up, and we'd gone to like use the toilet and freshen up and then come back, and we were told, oh, he's awake, are you going in? And I was like, awake? Like, oh my God. But when I walked in, I'd looked at him and he was breathing erratic, and he looked brain damaged, is the only way I can describe. Though it wasn't Charlie, it was just Charlie's body, but it wasn't him. Anyway, they said that he couldn't cope with the breathing, so they were going to put him back to sleep and try again the next day. His brain just needed rest. The next day, they took him off the life support, but he didn't tolerate it. They didn't take him off. They were going to remove his tube, but he wasn't even tolerating the drugs being lowered. So they said like they were going to leave it a little bit longer. So I felt really deflated then and panicked, like, well, there's a chance he might not survive, and it was just a different sort of reality hit then. We went to get a coffee, we came back and buzzed the buzzer to go in as normal, and they said, oh, can you go in the family room? So I thought, there's something wrong, definitely. Like, I just knew instantly. So I was like, right, okay. So it seemed like it took hours to come to us. So he came and they said, we need to take him for a scan because they checked the pupils and his pupils were fixed and dilated.
Right.
Now, I instantly know what that means. I'm not stupid. He's died. He's gone. I was Googling. My family was saying, don't look, it might not be. And I'm like, he's died. Literally fixed and dilated pupils. That's what it means. So, and then they came back and told us he was brain dead. Yeah, sorry.
Don't be sorry. This is obviously I've got a child myself, so I can't imagine what you've been through, but I can fathom the pain that it bring. If you want to take a moment, you can. It's fine.
I'm alright. Yeah.
No, it's really brave of you to share that, and I'm glad that you've had the opportunity to share that experience and tell us what the struggles of not only Charlie's struggles but a parent's struggles, because that sounds, it's not something that any parent would ever want to go through. So like, big respect for having the strength, even the strength to be here now to talk about it. I mean, it takes a lot of muscle, that does.
So I've always said from the off, like, I'm going to fight and make sure that there was justice for him, because somebody was accountable for what had happened to him. So I wasn't going to give up. And I think it just gave me drive after he died. Like, I need to now be his voice and, figure out what's gone on here, and people have to be accountable. I've not stopped ever since. So the inquest itself, we had to wait. We only had the inquest in April this year. So we literally waited like all that time, 3.5 years after he died.
After he passed, when you said before about you didn't know, you weren't called about the first, second and third ligature, I'm obviously presuming strongly that you learnt this after after the fourth one.
Yeah.
Or after he'd did you learn after he'd passed about
Yeah,
the first
so we got
three?
told it was the fourth ligature during the time he was in hospital, literally in the first hour of the
And then you're thinking, what, like four? What do you mean fourth?
Yeah, like when
Yeah.
honestly, it was the nurse in charge had turned up at the hospital and she had two different stories what she was telling us, and me and my partner were looking like, well, which one is it? Like, so the story, she said she'd found him first of all, then she said she didn't find him, somebody else did, and it was like, okay, whatever. But when she told us it was the fourth one, I was like, why was he not put on 1-to-1? And she just broke down and couldn't answer the question. So that always stuck with me then. So when after Charlie had died, we found out a hell of a lot, because then we've got disclosure then for the inquest, the statements, paperwork. The stuff we found out afterwards was absolutely unreal. Like the failures, basic things that were failed, and it's like I'm so angry. Like it could have been prevented. This whole situation could have been prevented, but it wasn't. You know.
Let's talk about after Charlie passed, and then you becoming the voice for him, and obviously you knew there was some ill practices that had gone on.
Yeah.
You knew that the staffing was probably not the greatest.
Yeah.
Things had not been done by the book, and what's the worst thing that I've heard is that the three initial attempts to take his own life were not even, he wasn't even up to the one-on-one. So when you started putting all these things together and thinking, right, there is someone to blame here, there is justice is needed. Tell me about that process and take me into this inquest.
Now, the inquest was told if Charlie had been placed in child protection, that would have accessed more multi-agency support for the family. Under the Carers Act, his family would have got additional support too, but that was never suggested by the social workers' supervisors. Charlie had made a complaint about a member of staff at the unit who he said had handled him roughly, called him stupid and had told him to man up. But his mum was never told about it. And weeks later, the police had raised concerns after he'd left the unit and was found on a motorway bridge.
I discovered that there was another death 9 weeks before Charlie in the same hospital around, or just on a different ward across the way. Now, this lad was 18, different circumstances, but still, I'll go into more detail, but it was all to do with lack of observation, etc. So very, very similar, same staff work across all of the wards. And I was contacted by the parent of this child who died before Charlie, and we kind of like teamed up, because then we had something in common. And I was quite shocked to find there was another death just 9 weeks before, and we've since found out that there is things that that could have been done from Rowan, he's called Rowan's death, that would have prevented Charlie, the observations and stuff around Charlie being the way they were, things would have been different. But they didn't learn from that death to make differences for Charlie's. And then also 6 months after Charlie's death, there was another death. So there was 3 in 9 months under the same staff, in the same hospital, in the same Junction 17.
That's clearly a massive problem and cause for concern. Was all this brought to light at the inquest, or did you take it to the inquest?
Yeah, so we had trouble. So Rowan had his inquest first, then the other girl whose family they've not done any fighting, they've kind of like accepted what had happened. So it was just me and Rowan's dad really that have kind of teamed up and, you know, done the campaigning, etc. Now, with Rowan's inquest, it was brought to light about the 3 deaths because NHS England were asked to investigate them, but NHS England didn't think there was an issue with 3 deaths in 9 months. If another patient, this was said at the inquest, the criteria would have been, say, if another patient killed another patient, NHS England would have got involved. But the fact that there was 3 deaths in 9 months, under the same staff wasn't a concern for NHS England.
That sounds like NHS trying to protect the NHS.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and also, I'd already put 2 complaints into CQC about Charlie's care, and I actually said, if things don't change, he's going to be dead. You know, I'm telling you this now as a parent in the September and October before he died, and then he dies in the December. So, with CQC had not done anything either. And they didn't really investigate much about the deaths. Nobody was bothered that there was these 3 deaths in 9 months. Nobody, you know. So I just went everywhere that I could to take the stories. Me and Rowan's dad, we did, you know, we went to every paper that we could just to get, you know, people to hear and see what was going on. So at Rowan's inquest, it came out that there was failures in observations and communication, etc. Because Rowan was seen at 10 o'clock, but then he should have been checked every 15 minutes, and he wasn't. Now, one thing that the hospital, there's a big thing about is they sign observation sheets that they've not actually observed the patient. So in Rowan's case, there was CCTV, luckily, and they had to confess basically and say, we lied, we didn't observe him, but we signed the paper. And it's senior management that are telling these nurses to can you just sign that for me? Can you just sign that? Now, Panorama actually went into the hospital undercover and they did something. So that was all exposed about the observations, everything, all of what we were having trouble highlighting all came out there, which was great anyway. But yeah, with Charlie's inquest, it was a bit more difficult because there was no CCTV. Now, we queried the observations because they couldn't tell us who was even checking every 5 minutes, let alone even 15 minutes. In the first hour and 15 minutes, I dropped Charlie back at the hospital. There was nobody, no sheets were signed. There wasn't even a 5-minute observation sheet for the night. There was paperwork just missing. Nurses didn't even know who was supposed to be observing who at what time. There was just so much, like, it was crazy, you know. So all of this came out at the inquest. Also, going back to me not having any communication on the night of the incident, if they'd have rang me, I could have FaceTimed Charlie and brought him down, but I never got that opportunity. Also, I'd have gone to the unit, took Charlie for a drive and brought him back. I used to do that. If somebody had rang me, there could have been a way we could have tried at least, but to have no communication at all until you're being told that your child's having CPR is just not, it's not acceptable and not okay.
Is it harder to take knowing that this is probably preventable?
To drop your son off at somewhere where they're supposed to be checked and looked after, and you think, because me and Charlie were both comfortable, well, not comfortable, probably the wrong word, but I could let him go to the unit, and if he ligatured, he'd be found in time. And even Charlie said that himself. That's why he doesn't do it at home, because he can be found in time at the unit. So it was never about him dying with the ligatures. It was self-harm. To let your child go somewhere and they're not looked after, it's hard to take.
Who was it that was putting the wrong times in and that was lying about the signatures that were lied about?
It was nurses, and it was also a bank worker. 2 bank workers. It signed for observations they'd not done.
Have they had any comeback? Have they had to deal, like, face consequences? Because this is really bad.
Yeah, so I got the police involved. Like they did when someone dies, the police have to investigate anyway.
Yeah.
So they had to go to his room at the unit and confiscate his phone, his iPad, the bits and bobs really, just to see obviously if there was any sign that it was suicide or anything like that. But it wasn't ruled suicide at the inquest anyway. So the police just literally, they didn't do very much, and then that was that. But my head was so in everything, I didn't really think about the police until later on. Now we luckily we got somebody who worked at the unit, not going to mention the name. Actually, we did a fundraiser around Charlie's first anniversary, and this person came to us and said, I work at the unit, and basically whistle blew to us about a lot. So they had an envelope with a lot of information that was really relevant. And they said, the person said, things have been changed, they're lying, and what have you, because they could see the pushing I was doing. So they felt, but they didn't want their name, their identity exposed or anything. So we've kept that secret. But this person has given us so much information, so much so, the coroner actually asked GMP to get involved again and reinvestigate. So we'd got an inquest date, but then it was postponed for 15 months for the next inquest date because for GMP to do their investigation. Yes. Now, we couldn't believe it, but a few weeks before the inquest, they basically said, we've not found anything. And when I was asking questions about this investigation, have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? The woman actually said, well, to be honest, I've only just took over. I don't really know much about it, etc. But we've decided there's nothing criminal because they were looking for corporate or gross negligence, manslaughter. Now, they said that they can't meet the threshold of that. And I'm thinking, what? There's falsified observations. There's so much to look at. And yet you're coming back and saying there's nothing criminal. So we had we got the inquest date, and when the police was giving evidence, the coroner questioned on so much like the observation sheet. Did you manage to get hold of the 5-minute observation sheet? Oh, what's one of them? We didn't even know they existed. You're the police, you're supposed to have investigated, and we've waited 15 months for a new inquest date. We're at this inquest now, and you're telling us, actually, you don't really know what you've looked at. That's what you're saying. So that was just absolute shambles. And after, I thought, get through the inquest, and I'm going to go back to the police, because I think, obviously, with the evidence from the inquest as well, they're going to definitely look at it, aren't they, and say, no, we've got evidence. So the coroner wrote to GMP, and basically said, you need to be looking at this. I can't break it down anymore for you, but, this is the times of where people should have been with what, patient, who lied, who signed what. She couldn't have broke it down anymore for the police to be able to go and look at these things. And they went away and came back and said, so this period of Charlie being dropped off to when he did the final ligature was about 2 hours and 45 minutes. Yeah. So the stuff before, so the ligatures before, the fact that they have signed the wrong sheets in them hours before, because the final ligature that killed him didn't happen in that 2-hour period, that don't matter. We push that aside. The final one, actually, it was found on time. They responded on time. And I'm like, so the way I put it to the police was, if somebody's kidnapped and tortured for 2.5 hours and then they die, as a result, you're not bothered about the kidnap and the torture, and it's just the fact that they've died. Is that what it is? And she said, well, no, I see where you're coming from, and I said, well, it don't make sense. You're telling me there's criminal things. You've actually said things are criminal, but you're not going to punish people. And that's where we're at really with the police right now. Is it
still kind of an ongoing?
No, there's no investigation. They literally won't look at it, Luke.
What's the cause? Because you said before that suicide wasn't. Yeah. You said suicide wasn't the cause.
No.
Of death.
It was hypoxic brain injury. So it was a misadventure, but it was down to obviously the failings and the negligence, etc.
From the staff.
Yeah.
And what's happened to these staff?
One's been promoted, so the nurse in charge is now a matron.
Sorry, say that again. One's been promoted.
She's now a matron. She told us that on the stand at the inquest.
Someone that has been outed as being someone part responsible for the negligence.
Yeah.
Has been promoted.
She's now a matron. Yeah.
How does that make you feel? That must make you feel sick.
Absolutely. I really do not understand the system. These staff don't get punished. They won't do anything. So they've gone back into their work. Oh, we'll learn our lesson. We won't repeat our behaviour, etc. But we did do what we did, but no punishments. And I've said to the police, while you are not punishing people, this will carry on. This will continue to happen because you're not punishing people. So they're just sat there like, we'll get away with it anyway. They'll just put whatever narrative suits them out, and that's what they're sticking to. Nobody's going to look into it. You know, I mean, the police hate me. GMMH hate me. You know,
Oh God, you're doing something right. You're doing something right then.
Yeah, that I have absolutely shouted out about everything because I think people have got a right to know. Now there are other families now with children in these units and, you know, loved ones, and they need to know what the system's all about. Yeah. Now, the one thing that the police came to me, and this really, really troubles me. So I said about obviously observations and that people should be put on one-to-one. When people ligature, you can't play with seconds. You've got
straight
no
away one-to-one.
Yeah, literally. So I said about the training, they should be trained to be able to take the ligature off. I mean, who needs training for that anyway? But if they need the training, everybody should be able to do immediate life support and not have to wave somebody down. So that's one thing. But the observations, the 15-minute fives and the one-to-one, I don't think somebody should be on 5-minute checks when they do ligatures, especially like Charlie did, because there's no time. So if someone's going to ligature and then you go to them 5 minutes later, they could be dead. Because that, you know, it's a short time, but it's so long when you're talking about this sort of incident. So I wanted people to be put on one-to-one, but at least Charlie was on 5-minute checks if we look at that, because if he was on 15, we wouldn't have got the 5 days in intensive care with him. He'd have been dead. You know, he wouldn't have been found on time.
Is your mission now to try and put some changes into how they do things?
Yeah,
so this doesn't happen again to someone else's child?
I think a system that would work would be, so when you go to hospital, you get a tag, a name band, with a barcode on, a scan code. I think all the patients should have a scan code thing around the wrist, and that when you go and do an observation on a person, so you're supposed to go up to the person and check if they're breathing. This is what the checks are supposed to look like. They don't do that. But if you've gone up to a person and scanned their name band, you've been to that person, haven't you? And I think there should be that sort of system, not just, oh, a piece of paper, we'll sign it, you know, in a couple of hours. Because the one thing on Charlie's observation sheet that was signed, now this was a 15-minute one, on the time, there was 2 times where they'd put awake in his bed space, so BA is in bed awake. They'd crossed that out and put ME, medical emergency, and they'd crossed it out and put the ME. So I queried at the inquest, why was that crossed out? So to me, that's saying they filled it out, but then thought, oh, shit, we've got this now emergency, we're going to have to change it now, we're going to have to put the truth in, when we didn't really actually go and, you know, look at him at that time. And it's like, oh yeah, so that's one thing. I think the observation system as a whole has to be looked at different, you know, and I think the name band thing would work.
If there's 3 things that you would change about this system, you just said the first one then about the observations and the barcode and the scanning and stuff like that. What are 2 others that you have with what you've been through?
So
what 2 others would you like to see changed?
I'd love to see the nurses doing what they're supposed to do. That'd be great. Just do your job. That would be a good start.
That's quite anyway. Fair enough.
But the big one is the support workers. I've been a support worker myself, and I've had advanced ILS training. So I've had basic first aid. So I've had basic first aid training, but they should be trained to be able to take the ligature off and deal with the immediate, you know, life support. So I'd like to see that bank workers are not waving staff down or, you know, hoping that somebody's on the ward that can actually come and do it at the time. That's a big one for me. Obviously the observations. And then the third one is this whole therapeutic risk taking. Now, I'm not an expert in mental health and what have you, but from my experience with Charlie, to let somebody out on a Section 2 who is very mentally unwell, knowing they're going to end up on a bridge because we've been here, 15 times before, it all needs looking at how they deal with that. I don't believe somebody on a Section 2 should have free will to be able to go out when they want, where they want.
As a mother who's the parent of a child who is transitioning or has mental health issues, and maybe the child is struggling or the parent is struggling, what advice would you give to parent going through either mental health issues with the child or transitioning? What would you say?
So for parents, firstly, with their transitioning, just literally be there for your child. I know that there's some parents that don't agree with it and it's difficult. You know, it is a difficult thing, but literally just listen to your child. Your child will tell you what they want and how they want things to go. Just sit, talk to your child. You'll learn everything from your child, and go from there, and just reach out to other parents. I always say, no, anybody can contact me and, ask me. I've had other parents ask me for advice on what did you do in such a situation.
Would you be willing to put an email address
Yeah.
under the description of this video?
I'm fine. If anybody wants to contact me,
Yeah.
I'm absolutely fine with that.
Because you could save, if a parent needs your help, you
Yeah.
could potentially save another child's life,
Yeah.
which would be good for Charlie's memory, I think.
Yeah, I honestly, like, if anybody wants to contact me, I'm in touch with so many parents that we've lost our children to under GMMH. Actually, there's there's so many children. It doesn't just stop at the 3 deaths, and so I'm in contact with a lot of the parents. But yeah, I always say I don't mind it. I can talk about anything and listen to anybody and give as much of advice as I can. So I don't mind anybody contacting me to do that at all. Yeah, your child is your child, whether they're born female, wants to be a boy, they're still your child. And as a parent, you're supposed to protect them and give them as much support as possible. I know it's a difficult thing. It was very difficult for me, and you do go through a grieving process when you've lost the child that you had, but you've got to look at the child you've gained as well. Like, they're not just a different person. I've got to build up a new relationship. They're still your child, and yeah, just speak to friends and family, and it's okay to feel certain feelings. That's okay. But the ultimate thing that a parent needs to remember, and I think it just comes with difficulty. You are a parent, you're going to face difficulties anyway, but it's not about you, it's about your child. It's their life. You're the parent who's not changed anything. You're still the parent, but your child's got to go through so much now in life, and there's still a lot of hate towards people who are transgender, etc. So they need to come to you. You need to be their support. So as hard as it is, just
do your job. Do your job.
Do your job. Be a mum. Be a dad. Be a parent. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It isn't. I think the moral in terms of parents is ain't about us.
No.
It's about them and how happy they are. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to say? Anything you want to say to parents? Any youngsters that might watch this? Is there any final thoughts you've got?
Yeah. I firstly want to say to young people, the ligaturing, it's a really serious thing. Like, I do know that people use it as a self-harm tool, but I think there should be more support for the people who ligature, more so than people that cut, etc. Because it's really risky. Like, look what happened with Charlie, and he didn't want to die in that moment. He just used it. So if you are a young person and you do feel like you're at that point, reach out to somebody.
Thank you for sharing all that. I appreciate you coming on this channel to do so, and I think there's a lot that I've learned, and there's a lot that parents can learn and young people can learn, and there's a little bit for everybody there. And you've got my respect with just sitting here telling the story. A lot of people could fold, and I really wish you luck in what you now go on to do. I hope you keep, well, I'm sure you will keep fighting for the changes.
Yeah.
And yeah, let me know, keep me updated on what occurs, and yeah, hopefully we'll see some changes in how Charlie was looked after or not looked after. And yeah, thank you very much for coming onto the channel.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Good luck.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye bye.